The empty mall shift. It was supposed to be just another quiet night for Aaron, a 32-year-old security guard who worked the night shift at a large suburban shopping mall. The mall had been closed for hours, the lights dimmed to a dull glow, and the long hallways stretched into darkness like hollow veins. His job was simple: walk the rounds, make sure no doors were left unlocked, and watch the security cameras from the control room. Easy money, he thought. But that night would prove different. At around 2:30 a.m., Aaron was seated in front of the bank of monitors, sipping cheap coffee, when one of the cameras caught something strange. On camera 12, located in the children's play area near the food court, he saw movement. A small shadow darted across the screen. At first he thought it was a trick of the light. Maybe a rat or bird had gotten inside. But then he saw it again. The outline of what looked like a child. Aaron frowned. A kid? In the mall? At this hour? He grabbed his flashlight and radio, then started the long walk down toward the play area. The air in the empty mall felt heavier than usual, each of his footsteps echoing too loudly. When he arrived at the food court, everything seemed normal. Chairs stacked on tables, floor freshly mopped by the cleaning staff earlier, no sign of a child. But as he shined his flashlight toward the play area, his blood ran cold. Sitting on one of the plastic slides was a little girl. Her hair was tangled, her dress looked old and dirty, and she wasn't moving. Aaron froze, unsure what to do. He called out, "Hey, are you lost? Where are your parents?" The girl turned her head slowly toward him. Her face was pale, her eyes darker than the shadows themselves. And then, in the faintest whisper, she said, "They don't like you being here." Before Aaron could even respond, the girl slid down the plastic slide, but when she reached the bottom, she was gone. Just gone. Aaron stumbled backward, his flashlight shaking in his hand. He radioed to his partner, another guard on the opposite side of the mall, but got only static in response. Breathing heavily, he decided to check the cameras again. When he returned to the control room, his stomach twisted in fear. On every monitor, every single hallway, every corner of the mall, he saw the little girl, standing still, watching him. Sometimes alone, sometimes in groups of 2 or 3 identical copies of her. Their eyes glowed faintly in the black and white feeds. Aaron panicked. He grabbed his keys and rushed toward the nearest exit, but when he pushed on the glass doors, they wouldn't budge. Locked. He knew for a fact he hadn't locked them. The mall wasn't supposed to lock from the inside, yet somehow he was trapped. Behind him, the sound of small footsteps echoed on the tiled floor. Slowly, he turned. Down the hall, maybe 30 feet away, the little girl stood staring at him again. She tilted her head, smiled, and whispered something he barely caught over the echoing emptiness. "You're one of us now." The lights flickered and went out. When Aaron's co-workers arrived at 6 a.m., they found the control room empty. His car was still in the lot. His flashlight and radio were neatly placed on the desk, and Aaron was never seen again.
The Graveyard Factory. Victor had been working as a night security guard for over 5 years, but when he got a job at the abandoned textile factory outside of town, he immediately sensed something was wrong. The building had been closed for more than 2 decades, yet the company still paid guards to patrol it, claiming it was for insurance purposes. The factory was massive: rusting machines, shattered windows, peeling paint, and the smell of mildew. At night, the silence was oppressive, broken only by the distant sound of dripping water and the occasional scurry of rats. On his 3rd night, Victor started hearing noises. At first, it was just faint banging, as if pipes were shifting. But then he began hearing voices, whispers echoing through the empty corridors. words he couldn't quite understand, but always close enough that he felt like someone was right behind him. He reported it to his supervisor, but they laughed it off. "You'll get used to it. The place has a way of playing tricks on people." One night, around 4 a.m., Victor was patrolling the second floor when he heard the sound of a sewing machine. Clear as day, the rhythmic clack, clack, clack echoed from the far end of the hall. He followed it, his heart pounding. When he entered the old sewing room, his flashlight illuminated rows of broken machines. But one of them, in the center of the room, was moving. The wheel turned by itself, the needle pumping up and down, though there was no fabric beneath it. And then he saw them. At least a dozen figures sat hunched over the machines, their bodies pale, skin sagging, eyes hollow. They sewed with broken fingers, moving in jerky, unnatural motions. Some of them didn't even have faces, just stretched skin where features should have been. Victor stumbled backward, dropping his flashlight. The sewing stopped all at once, and in the darkness, he heard all of them turn their heads toward him. "You don't belong here," a dozen voices whispered in unison. Victor sprinted down the hall, tripping over debris, desperate to get to the exit. But every door he tried was locked, chained, or rusted shut. Behind him, the sound of footsteps grew louder, dozens of them rushing in his direction. When he finally made it outside through a broken window, he swore he could still hear the machines running behind him, and the voices chanting softly, "Stay, sew, stay, sew." Victor quit the job the next day. Years later, he still has nightmares of faceless workers stitching endlessly in the dark. The hospital morgue shift. Marcus was assigned to guard the city hospital overnight. It wasn't glamorous, but the pay was decent. The hospital was mostly quiet at night, except for the occasional patient out of bed or nurse on late duty. But Marcus dreaded one area in particular, the basement morgue. His patrol required him to walk past it every 2 hours. He hated that hallway. The air was always colder, the fluorescent lights flickered, and the faint smell of disinfectant mixed with something sour. One night, as he passed by around 1 a.m., he heard something from inside. A muffled thud, like something heavy dropping onto the floor. He froze. The morgue was supposed to be locked. He checked the handle. It was unlocked. Against his better judgment, he pushed it open. Inside, the room was dimly lit, metal drawers lining the walls. One of them was hanging open. On the floor beneath it lay a body bag. It had fallen out. Marcus's stomach twisted. He stepped closer, debating whether to call a nurse when the bag moved. At first, he thought it was just settling. But then the zipper began to slide open from the inside. Marcus stumbled backward as a pale hand emerged, then an arm, and then the entire body of a man in a hospital gown. His skin was gray, his eyes lifeless, but he moved with slow, jerking motions. The man stepped toward him, lips parting to release a low groan. Marcus tried to shout, but his voice caught in his throat. He turned and bolted from the morgue. As he sprinted down the hall, he glanced back and nearly collapsed in terror. It wasn't just one body. Every single drawer in the morgue was open now, figures crawling out one by one. The hospital halls filled with the sound of dragging feet and guttural moans. Marcus raced to the stairwell, slamming the door behind him. He didn't stop running until he was outside, gasping for breath under the cold night air. When he returned with other staff, the morgue was perfectly normal. All the drawers were closed. No signs of disturbance. but Marcus never worked another shift there again. And to this day, when he passes a hospital at night, he swears he can still hear the sound of drawers sliding open.